December 2020, after 51 years of silence, the Zodiac Killer finally spoke again. Not for another murder, not for another taunting letter, but through a code that have baffled the FBI, stumped cryptographies worldwide, and consumed the minds of amateur sleuths for half a century. 3 ordinary people, a programmer, a mathematician, and a warehouse worker, achieved what law enforcement agents couldn't. They cracked the Z340 cipher, and what it revealed was absolutely chilling. But here's what the headlines won't tell you. The message didn't reveal the killer's identity. Instead, it proves something far more disturbing about the mind behind America's most notorious unsolved case. I'm your host, and this is Boyzilla. Today, we're diving deep into the Zodiac investigation, the ciphers, the codes, and the prime suspect who wasn't what he seemed to be. If you're new here, we cover the cases others won't touch, the disappearances, the cover-ups, and crimes so disturbing they're whispered about more than they're spoken. We drop deep dives every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. No fluff, no filler. So if you're into the real stories that chill your spine and challenge your sense of what's possible, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another case. And you know what? Let's jump into the story. Let me take you back to November the 8th, 1969. The San Francisco Chronicle received an envelope containing 340 cryptographic symbols arranged in a grid. No letter, no explanation, just this. The killer has struck again, but this time with his deadliest weapon yet, a puzzle that would torment investigators for over 5 decades. You see, this wasn't the Zodiac's first cipher. 3 months earlier, he sent the Z408, a 408 character code split across 3 letters to different newspapers. That one was cracked within a week by a schoolteacher and his wife. The message was disturbing. It said, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all." For the C340, that remained unbreakable. The FBI threw their best crypto analysts at it. Amateur code breakers dedicated their lives to solving it. Computer programs specifically designed for cipher breaking were developed and tested against it, but nothing worked. Until December the 5th, 2020, when David Oranchak, a software developer from Virginia, Sam Blake, a mathematician from Melbourne, and Joel van Elk, a Belgian warehouse worker turned cipher enthusiast, they submitted their solution to the FBI's crypto analysis and racketeering records unit. The breakthrough came through a combination of mathematical analysis and modern computing power. They discovered the cipher wasn't just a simple substitution code. It's what's called a homophonic substitution cipher combined with a complex transposition method. Think of it like this. Imagine taking a sentence, replacing each letter with multiple possible symbols, then cutting that message into segments and rearranging them like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. That's essentially what the Zodiac did, but with mathematical precision that would make a cryptographer weep. And when they finally cracked it, the message read, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner. Because I now have enough slaves to work for me, where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise. So they are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know that my new life, this life will be an easy one in paradise, death." Notice something? The killer misspelled paradise as paradise twice. This wasn't some criminal mastermind playing 4D chess. This was a man with delusions of grandeur or who genuinely believed killing people would give him slaves in the afterlife. But here's the truly chilling part. After 51 years, we finally have definitive proof that the Zodiac ciphers weren't designed to reveal his identity. They were designed to torture law enforcement and feed his ego. The Zodiac Killer terrorized Northern California between 1968 and 1969, claiming responsibility for at least 5 murders, though he boasted of killing 37 people. What made him different from other serial killers wasn't just his method, it was his need for attention. Between July 1969 and April 1978, he sent at least 18 letters to newspapers and police. Each one contained specific details about his crimes that only the killer would know. But it was his use of ciphers that truly set him apart. 4 main ciphers emerged from the Zodiac communications: the C408, which was solved in 1969, revealing his twisted motivation; the C340, solved in 2020, showing his delusions about the afterlife; the C13, sent in April 1970, only 13 characters long; the C32, sent in June 1970, 32 characters. Those last 2 remain unsolved to this day, and many cryptographers believe they may not contain coherent messages at all. The murders themselves followed a pattern: young couples in secluded areas, quick, brutal attacks. The killer would approach with a flashlight, sometimes in a hooded costume, and strike without warning. Lake Herman Road, December 1968, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, both teenagers, shot and killed. Blue Rock Springs, July 1969, Darlene Ferrin shot dead. Michael Magoo, severely wounded but survived. Lake Baradesi, September 1969, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, attacked by a hooded figure claiming to be a escaped convict. Hartnell survived. Shepard died 2 days later. Presidio Heights, October 1969, cab driver Paul Stein shot and killed, part of his shirt taken as a trophy. Each crime left investigators with fragments: a footprint here, a fingerprint there. Witness descriptions that varied but painted a picture of a white male, heavy set, around 35 to 40 years old. But it was the letters that truly drove the investigation. The killer taunted police, threatened to shoot school children, and demanded his letters be published on newspaper front pages. When they complied, he rewarded them with more cryptic clues. The cross-circle symbol became his signature. The name, Zodiac, became synonymous with calculated terror, and law enforcement agencies across California found themselves hunting a ghost who seemed to vanish between attacks. Now, here's where the story takes a turn that most people don't know about. Because if you've watched any documentary or film about the Zodiac Killer, you've probably heard one name above all others: Arthur Leigh Allen. Allen became the prime suspect largely through the work of political cartoonist Robert Graysmith, whose books, The Zodiac and Zodiac Unmasked, painted him as the most likely candidate. David Fincher's 2007 film, Zodiac, further cemented Allen's role as the chief suspect in the public mind. But here's what you need to understand, and this is crucial. Virtually every major piece of evidence against Arthur Leigh Allen was either fabricated, misrepresented, or completely fictional. Let me walk you through the real story. Allen first came to police attention in August 1971, almost 3 years after the first Zodiac attack. A man named Donald Cheney contacted police claiming that Allen had confessed to him in late 1968 or early 1969 about planning to kill couples at lovers' lanes using the name Zodiac and write taunting letters to the police. Sounds damning, right? Here's the problem. Cheney had a personal grudge against Allen. He'd previously accused Allen of attempting to molest his daughter. When investigators interviewed Allen's family, they described Cheney as untrustworthy and suggested he was just seeking revenge. Let's examine this supposed evidence piece by piece, because this is where it gets really interesting. The Zodiac Watch. Graysmith claimed Allen owned a rare Zodiac brand wristwatch with the cross circle symbol, and that he received it just days before the first murder. The truth? Allen's mother gave him that watch as a Christmas gift in December 1967, a full year before the Zodiac crimes began. And Zodiac watches, they weren't rare, they were widely available and advertised in popular magazines. The cross-circle symbol had been used in astronomy for centuries. The handwriting. Multiple handwriting experts, they examined samples of Allen's writing, produced with both hands since he was ambidextrous. Every single expert concluded that Allen did not write the Zodiac letters. Graysmith invented an elaborate theory involving overhead projectors to explain this away, but Sherwood Morrell, the state's top handwriting expert, maintained that the Zodiac used his own natural handwriting. Physical description. This is perhaps the most damaging evidence against Allen as a suspect. Witnesses described the Zodiac as 5'8", around 195 to 200 pounds, with short curly brown hair. Allen's driving licence from 1967 listed him as 6'1", 250 pounds, and by 1969 he was described by police as bald. The physical description simply didn't match. The DNA evidence. In 2002, the San Francisco Police Department, they announced that DNA taken from confirmed Zodiac letters did not match Arthur Leigh Allen. This should have ended all speculation about his guilt, but the myth persisted. The family suspicions. Graysmith claimed Allen's own family suspected him and reported him to the police. Allen's brother and sister-in-law have consistently stated this is just completely false. They never suspected Allen, never reported him, and to this day they maintain his innocence. The Michael Mageau identification. In 1991, surviving victim Michael Mageau identified Allen from a photo lineup. However, Mageau had previously described his attacker as short and heavy set, not matching Allen's 6'1" frame. The identification came 22 years after the attack, when Mageau had admittedly seen the killer's face for only seconds during the traumatic shooting. Here's what actually happened during the Allen investigation. The San Francisco Police Department inspectors, Bill Armstrong and David Toshi, identified Allen thoroughly in 1971 to 1972. They searched his property, interviewed witnesses, examined his handwriting, and took his fingerprints. After about a year, they dropped the investigation and moved on to what they described in official documents as excellent suspects. The only agencies that ever considered Allen a viable suspect were some members of the Vallejo Police Department, influenced largely by stories in Graysmith's books. The San Francisco Police Department, the FBI, and other involved agencies never considered Allen a legitimate suspect. So why did the Allen theory persist? Because it was made for a compelling story. Robert Graysmith needed a suspect for his book, and Allen fit the profile of a creepy loner that readers could believe was capable of such crimes. The media ran with it, documentaries repeated the claims, and eventually, fiction became accepted as a fact. But the evidence tells a very different story. Every piece of physical evidence, DNA, fingerprints, handwriting, witness descriptions, excluded Arthur Leigh Allen as the Zodiac Killer. So, if Arthur Leigh Allen wasn't the Zodiac Killer, then who was? Well, that's the question that continues to haunt investigators today. The case remains open across multiple jurisdictions. The FBI, San Francisco Police Department, and other agencies continue to receive tips and investigate potential suspects, but the reality is that after more than 50 years, the trail has gone cold. What we do know paints a picture of the killer that both more and less frightening than the legend suggests, but what the evidence tells us? The Zodiac was likely a white male in his late 30s to early 40s during the active period. He had some knowledge of cryptography, but wasn't the mastermind many believed him to be. His ciphers, while complex, contained basic mistakes and were more about psychological warfare than demonstrating his genius. He was organised enough to plan attacks, but disorganised enough to leave evidence at crime scenes. He craved attention and validation, evidenced by his constant communications with the media. Most importantly, he was human, not the supernatural boogeyman of urban legend, but a disturbed individual who committed horrific crimes and then disappeared into obscurity. Two ciphers remain unsolved, the C13 and the C32. Many cryptographers now believe that they may not contain coherent messages at all. They could be random symbols assigned to just waste investigators' time, or they could contain short phrases like names or locations. In recent years, a French engineer claimed to have solved both, revealing the name KAYR, but the FBI and other cryptographic experts have not validated this solution. Today's investigators have tools the original detectives couldn't have imagined. DNA analysis has advanced dramatically since 2002. New fingerprint technologies can abstract clearer prints from aged evidence. Genetic genealogy, the technique that caught the Golden State Killer, offers new possibilities for identification. The problem is the quality and the quantity of evidence available. The Zodiac case spans multiple jurisdictions and decades. Some evidence has been lost, contaminated, or downgraded beyond usefulness. In October 2021, a group called the Case Breakers claimed to have identified the Zodiac Killer as Gary Francis Post, a deceased Air Force veteran. They pointed to circumstantial evidence including scars on Post's forehead that allegedly maps the composite sketch. However, the FBI quickly stated that the case remained open and that no conclusive evidence has been found. Law enforcement agencies involved in the investigation did not validate the identification. This illustrates an ongoing problem with the Zodiac case, the proliferation of amateur theories and claimed solutions that generate headlines but lack official verification. The 2020 breakthrough in solving the Z340 cipher wasn't just about closing a cold case chapter. It represented a fascinating intersection of old-fashioned detective work and modern computational power. David Oranchak, Sam Blake and Joel Van Elk didn't just guess their way to the solution. They developed sophisticated algorithms, tested hundreds or thousands of possible transpositions, and used statistical analysis to identify patterns that pointed towards the correct decipherable method. Their work proved that C340 cipher used a combination of homophonic substitution, where each letter could be represented by multiple symbols, transposition, where the message was rearranged in a complex pattern, segmentation, where different parts of the cipher used different rules. The breakthrough came when they realised the cipher was split into 3 sections. The first required a specific transposition method, the middle section was read normally, and the final section used the same substitution key but no transposition. This level of complexity suggests the Zodiac had more cryptographic knowledge than initially believed, but also reveals his limitations. The spelling errors, the awkward phrasing, and the fact that the message contained no useful information about his identity, and they all point to someone who understood codes but wasn't a professional cryptographer. The success in cracking the Z340 has implications beyond the Zodiac case. It demonstrates that old, unsolved ciphers aren't necessarily unsolvable. They might just be waiting for the right combination of human insight and computational power. Other historical ciphers that have resisted solution for decades or centuries might yield their secrets to similar approaches. The techniques developed for the C340 are already being applied to other cryptographic mysteries. What about the Z13 and the Z32? These shorter ciphers present different challenges. With only 13 and 32 characters respectively, there aren't enough text for statistical analysis to be effective. They could contain names, locations, or even random symbols designed to waste time. Some cryptographers believe they may never be solved definitively because there isn't enough content to verify a correct solution. Others continue to work on them, hoping that the techniques used for the C340 might eventually unlock these final mysteries. After decades of investigation, thousands of suspects, and countless theories, what can we definitively say about the Zodiac Killer? What we do know: the Zodiac was responsible for at least 5 confirmed murders and 2 attempted murders between 1968 and 1969. He sent authenticated letters and ciphers to newspapers and police from 1969 to 1974. He was likely a local resident familiar with the San Francisco Bay Area. The physical evidence, fingerprints found on letters, DNA extracted from envelopes, and handwriting samples exists and could theoretically identify the killer if matched to a suspect. What we do not know: his true identity remains unknown. His motive beyond attention seeking and delusions about the afterlife is unclear. Whether he committed additional murders beyond the confirmed cases is unproven. Most importantly, we don't know if he's still alive. If the Zodiac was in his late 30s during the active period, he would be in his 80s or 90s today, assuming he's still living. Popular culture has transformed the Zodiac from a disturbed individual into a almost supernatural figure. Movies, books, and documentaries often present him as a criminal mastermind who outwitted law enforcement through superior intelligence. The reality is more mundane and perhaps more disturbing. The evidence suggests someone with personality disorders, delusions of grandeur, and enough knowledge to create complex puzzles, but not enough discipline to avoid leaving evidence at crime scenes. His ciphers, while mathematically sophisticated, contained spelling errors and revealed nothing useful about his identity. His letters showed knowledge of his crimes, but also demonstrated a desperate need for attention and validation. Despite decades passing, law enforcement agencies maintain that the case remains solvable. New techniques in DNA analysis, fingerprint enhancement, and genetic genealogy offer hope that physical evidence could eventually lead to the identification. The FBI continues to receive and investigate tips. Local police departments maintain their case file and review evidence with fresh eyes and new techniques. But investigators also acknowledge the challenges. Evidence has aged, witnesses have died, and the suspect himself may no longer be alive. Each passing year makes resolution less likely. The Zodiac Killer case represents both the best and the worst of criminal investigation. It shows how dedicated investigators can work for decades to seek justice, how amateur experts can contribute to solving complex puzzles, and how modern science continues to offer new hope for old cases. The message itself was disappointing. No revelation of identity, no confession that would bring closure to victims' family. Just the disturbed ramblings of someone who believed killing innocent people would somehow benefit him in the afterlife. But perhaps that's fitting. The Zodiac Killer was never the criminal mastermind that popular culture made him out to be. He was just a disturbed individual who committed horrific crimes, played games with law enforcement, and then faded into obscurity. The victims of the Zodiac Killer deserve justice. David Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen, Darlene Ferrin, Cecilia Shepard, and Paul Stein were young people with their whole lives ahead of them. Brian Hartnell and Michael McGowan survived their encounters but carry the trauma to this day. Their families deserve answers. The community terrorized by these crimes deserve closure. And someday, perhaps, the combination of preserved evidence, advancing technology, and dedicated investigation will provide both. Until then, the case remains what it always has been. Not an unsolvable mystery, but an unsolved one. The difference matters because it means there's still hope. And there you have it. If you found this deep dive into the Zodiac investigation fascinating, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're building the most comprehensive true crime analysis on YouTube, separating fact from fiction and giving you the real stories behind history's most notorious cases. What case should I investigate next? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, the truth is always more complex and more interesting than the legend. This has been Boyzilla. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next investigation.